Welcome. Well, you're at home with Jim and Joy, and you are an important part of our EWTN family. And we're so delighted that you've welcomed us into your home. You know, we would love to hear from you. So send us an email with a question or any comment that you have to jimandjoy@ewtn.com. Well, we had a great weekend. We were pretty busy. We have 17 grandchildren, for those of you who didn't know that. And I took two of the granddaughters out this weekend. We went to a basketball game. One of our other grandsons, we were supposed to do that Friday, but he got sick and we couldn't do that. Right. So we went to see one of our other grands in a basketball game.
When you have 17 grandchildren, everybody's doing something.
We could be in a gym every weekend. So then after the basketball game, Nina, the little one who played basketball, and her younger sister, Gloria, who are Rebecca's two little girls, we took them.
Those are two girls from a family of 8.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes they get lost in the shuffle and they just need to be taken out and celebrated. And that wasn't hard for me, so we went out and we went to lunch and then we went shopping. And then we were in one store and Nina says to Gloria, "Hey Gloria, you wanted to get your ears pierced." So Gloria already had them pierced and they closed up, and so Gloria goes, "Yeah, I will." And I'm like, "Oh, we need parental permission for this." So we got parental permission and we went to the place next door and they pierced her ears, and she was so happy. She was sparkling from the top of her head to the soles of her feet.
You know, we wanted to share about them. Like we said, there's 6 others in that family, and we just felt like you needed to spend some more time with those two, and that's really important, especially for grandparents.
Yeah.
You know, when you're looking at your grandchildren, and we do so much with all the grandkids or all of them in that particular family, but once in a while, you just got to get with one alone, or 2 of them alone, and just have fun with them, pour yourself into them, hear their hearts, and it's a great blessing for us, and it's a great blessing in their lives. So we just wanted to share about them a little bit.
Well, you know, because sometimes for me, in my work that we do at the Pregnancy Medical Center, on the weekend, you know, you need to refresh, renew, restore, and some of that for me is hanging out with my grandkids. It really refreshes me and blesses me back.
Well, we're going to be sharing today with Brandon Mcginley. He's been on our show some time back. He's the editor of a book called The Joys and Challenges of Family Life. And so he was with us a few years ago, wrote the book a number of years back. You can go to BrandonMcGinley.com, Brandon, McGinley.com, The Joys and Challenges of Family Life. It's a fantastic book. And he also worked with the EWTN Publishing some years back, and some of the main works that came out at that time, he was directly involved in doing that. And so it's going to be great to share with him. One of the things he shares in the book, there's a number of people who teach, but he's written like 3 chapters of it. And he just says the cure for perpetual adolescence, the cure for cultural perpetual adolescence is called parenthood.
Yes.
I thought that was really, really wonderful. So he's going to share his ongoing wisdom with us today. We'll be right back. There's plenty more to come. We're here to build up marriage and the family. Don't go away.
Welcome back. Well, you're at home with Jim and Joy, and today we have a wonderful guest for you. His name is Brandon Mcginley, and he's the editor of a great book, The Joys and the Challenges of Family Life. And anyone who's in a family, you know there's some challenges. You could go to his website. It's BrandonMcGinley.com. Well, Brandon, we want to welcome you again at home. We had you on a couple of years ago. Yeah. And I think you were father of just one child, right?
Yeah, it would have been 2. I think we probably just had our second around that time, because it was around the time that I started working for EWTN Publishing that our second child was born.
Well, perfect. Yeah. So tell our family at home what you have been up to since
Sure.
the last time we had you on.
Sure, yeah, it's been a lot. We now have 4 little ones.
There you go.
Yeah, and you know, at the time when I was here last, I just started working at EWTN Publishing, editing books for the network, and that journey just finished up about a month ago, and so now I'm just on my own, writing and speaking and continuing to edit and things like that. So
Share
I'm
with us
working on some projects.
Some of the books that came out when you were doing that work.
Sure,
I think
absolutely.
people would be familiar with them.
Sure, absolutely. We worked with, I was really lucky to work with some great folks. So we had, you know, I did 2 books with Dr. Ray Gorendi on Thinking Like Jesus, and I think it's Raising Upright Children in an Upside Down World. Worked with Father Wade Meneses on The 4 Last Things, and then we just did one. We just did another one with him, and Father John Horgan on the Angels of God. That was been one of the most popular ones we put out.
Was a great
I
book.
think, that was. I gave that one to my mom actually. That was that was the one that the one that we published that I gave to her. So I think, it was a great time for me to be able to work with so many interesting and talented people, and to help them to shape what I hope will be helpful books for people.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Well, we have your book here. We touched on it last time you were here to some degree. The Joys and Challenges of Family Life. Catholic Husbands and Fathers Speak Out. So this was written about 5 years ago?
Yeah, it came out, I know exactly, because it was scheduled to come out the day that our second was due, which ended up being the day he was actually born on. So yeah.
And so I think it's really wonderful to share about the time you wrote the book, where you were in that state of life, closer to the time, you know, of your marriage, newly married, child, another one on the way. Now you got 4 children. A lot of waters, you know, flowed under the bridge there.
A lot of diaper changing.
Oh my goodness.
Oh gosh. And well, like you say, you know, you've written 3 chapters of the book, and maybe not exactly this way, but you speak about the cultural problem of this continual adolescent state that seems to be, you know, present in our society, not for every young person, but it seems more prominent than when I was growing up, and that the cure for that is really marriage and parenthood. Elaborate upon that, and is that underlined as you go on in these years now?
I think, you know, the thing with perpetual adolescence is that not only does it focus you on yourself and your own needs and your own desires, but I think it also is a time of, and can become a continuing time of focusing exclusively on the here and now. And so not only does parenthood and does marriage and parenthood, not only do they take you out of yourself, but they also take you out of your time. They connect you with the future, with future generations, with your own future generations, and they can force you to think on those longer time horizons. Actually, this reminds me of one of the books that that I helped out with. It was a book that was written a long time ago that we brought out again with EWTN Publishing. It was by the late Cardinal Stefan Wyszynski about work. But there's a virtue that he talked about in that book that I'd never heard of before, but I think about all the time. It's called longanimity. It's the virtue of having an extended horizon for the good things that you're aiming at. So the classic example is planting a fruit tree that will never fruit in your lifetime, but nurturing it is a good for future generations. And that's a virtue that parenting teaches just from the very moment that you see your first child.
Yes.
That's huge.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about the culture, you talk with people, you know, we have what's called DINKs, double income, no children. And they go into it this way, and they want to keep it that way, maybe even sterilize themselves, you know, before the marriage or right after the marriage. I mean, it's bizarre. And there's so little thought about the future, and that this is the essence of marriage, is to be made one, and the blessing of children that may come forth. That's no guarantee, or to do foster care or to adopt. It's all about sowing yourself for the future as well as yourself. But we've really lost this. This isn't even part of the conversation. It's all about, you know, if I just want to experience what I experience, get all that I can, and if there's a future for somebody, that's theirs to get. It's not about me. But what you just shared was really profound.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's I think that we live in a culture and a society that doesn't even think in those long terms. So it's this kind of feedback loop where individuals struggle to think on that long horizon and struggle to kind of get out of our own way, get out of our own heads and out of our own desires. But then we live in a culture and a society that makes it very difficult. That doesn't encourage thinking on those long terms. It encourages you to get what you can right now and not worry about the future. And that often makes it difficult in terms of economics and in terms of the culture to even think about having children. And so I think that kind of committing to that and committing to being open to life, committing to your family is one of the more radical things that we can do.
Right.
Yeah.
And Mother Angelica used to say, I would be a saint if I didn't have to deal with other people, right? But that's the beautiful thing, is that when we in a relationship in marriage, I believe that Jim is making me holy and I am making him holy.
Yeah.
And you learn daily to die to yourself and to live for the other. The culture isn't teaching anybody this.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the magazine rack. It's me, self, us. I mean, it's all about me.
Yeah.
And it's so ad nauseum. And when you share and you're saying what you're saying, are there other young men like in your generation that are on your radar, or do you feel like a lone ranger out there?
I think one of the most difficult things that can happen is for someone in my position not to have anybody else around them, not to. We talk about how family, you're surrounding yourself with other people. But so often in today's world, you can end up in a situation where there's no one else around you who you can kind of who can work with, who are in a similar situation to you. And I'm lucky in that we've been able to develop a kind of collection of friends around us that have given me models of people doing the same thing, so we can support one another. I think one of the things that having people around you who are in a similar state in life and who are working towards the same things, one of the things that it makes really possible is being open to surprises, being open to God's providence that appears in ways that you don't always expect. This is what being open to life for me is all about. It's about being open to God literally giving you a new soul to nurture and to care for. And sometimes not exactly when you're expecting it. Sometimes precisely when you're expecting it. Like our second was born right when he was supposed to be. But most aspects of God's will are revealed to us in a surprising way. And dealing with contingencies, dealing with those kind of surprises that can be life-unending surprises is a lot easier when we have other people who are trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I remember your book, you speak about apocalypses.
Yeah.
One thought of apocalypse is the end of time and judgment and it's coming. But you say, no, these are revealings.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit of what you're talking about, that God desires really to reveal and to show if we're able to have eyes to see and ears to hear. You're mentioning this whole area of children, and you write about it, you have other authors that write about it, and you go in a number of ways with it. I mean, you have a chapter on infertility, right?
Yeah.
So we're all, get married, you're thinking, well, how many children are we going to have and this and that, and you wind up, you can't have children. You can't have children, right? Yeah. So there's that. And then we could be Christians, we could be Catholics, like you said in your writing. And somebody had asked you early on, how many kids are you going to have? And you said, well, we should have more than one, but 3 becomes unmanageable.
Right.
And you're saying, what I realized was I was in the Catholic Church and, kind of committed to it, but not really thoroughly committed.
Right.
And I was answering from the culture.
Yeah, answering from the culture and also answering from the perspective of control, the idea that this is my decision, but the number of children you have is not completely your decision. It's going to be, you could have fewer than you want or would have if you had total control because of the interventions of God in ways that can be very distressing. You could have more than you were planning. You just and that's what we talk about being open to life. It's being open to releasing control. Yes. And so those little apocalypses, the idea that a child is sometimes is perceived in our culture as truly being an apocalypse that just destroys everything in your life. But no, the word comes from the Greek for unveiling, for a revelation. So a child is a revelation of God's will for us, and it's I think one of the most important spiritual aspects of being open to those, of being open to life, is being open to God.
Right. And wouldn't you say that your children is what God has used to make you a better human being?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Also, in part precisely by revealing faults.
Right. No, but that's the journey, right? You just
Yeah.
say, oh my God, I am the most impatient,
Yeah.
unkind,
Yeah.
right? That's what he does.
Before I had kids, I would have told you that I used to have a temper.
Right.
And now, you know, I do have it.
Right, but that's the beauty. That's what he does, is
Yeah.
he reveals those hidden things about us, or those things that we think we're in control of.
Yes, absolutely.
And then he says, so let's shed some light on that.
Yeah.
Let's really lift the veil.
You know, you make the point in your writing that, you know, on one end you have people, maybe Catholic people, contracepting and so on, and it is about control. Again, how many kids we're going to have, and we're going to have them when we want them, and so on. And then you got the good, obedient, trying to be disciplined people on NFP, Natural Family Planning, and we're calculating and doing charts and doing whatever, and yet, you know, you don't get pregnant, or you have surprise children, and it really is about control. And so that thing of risking, is key to marriage and to the family and to parenthood.
Oh my goodness, yes. You know, someday I want to write something more substantial on this, but I think that our entire culture is based on the idea of sterility, that of safety, of the human being being naturally sterile and only fertile when chosen. You know, I think about when we take our kids to the playground, and I'm like, they're dirty. They're climbing in ways that are mildly uncomfortable for me, and if I really feel like it, I can be there to, you know. But like, they have to learn about. Part of their maturation is growing into who they can be, is to learn about risk. And a culture that completely eliminates risk is a culture that ultimately is closed to God's own surprises.
Totally, because you're being God.
Yeah,
you're
right.
saying, I mean, there's no
Yes.
room for God. There's no room for trust. And we couch it in verbiage that sounds like, I'm being responsible. Like, you're not a responsible adult.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. I'm being open to the Holy Spirit. You know what I mean? And that's a lie.
Yeah, I think our definition of practicality is often exclusively materialistic. So we say that someone's being practical, responsible, whatever, but we're only thinking material terms. Of what could be more practical than the sacraments? What could be more practical than being open to grace? What could be more practical than acknowledging the practical reality of Jesus Christ? So, yes, I think when we hear that language of practicality, responsibility, sure, we can use that language, but we have to think of it in terms of what's actually real, and what's actually real is God.
Right.
Well, let's pause at this point. We're going to keep you over for the third segment of our show. And we're speaking about the joys and sometimes the sorrows of marriage and a family, and how we really come to true maturity by stepping out in faith in marriage and in the family, and of accepting risk. And God always leaves a blessing with us. We'll be right back. Plenty more to come. Please don't go away.
Welcome back. Well, we're discussing the joys and the challenges of fatherhood. Before we continue our discussion, let's check in with Catherine Hadro. Now, Catherine, everyone did such an outstanding job covering the March for Life this year. How do you plan to wrap all these things up?
Hi, Jim and Joy. Well, during the recent March for Life week here in Washington, D.C., we were able to meet with some phenomenal pro-lifers who were in town for the event, including a very special high school student, Angelica Park. Angelica sang the national anthem on the March for Life rally stage, is convicted in the pro-life cause, and her own name, Angelica, is inspired by someone very dear to our EWTN viewers. Make sure to tune in for her story. And as always on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, we will have the latest pro-life news from our nation's capital for you. I also want to make sure viewers know about our call to action. This is a way for pro-lifers to get involved in the pro-life movement right from their very own home. To find out our latest call to action, just go to prolifeweekly.com. Again, you can take pro-life action by going to prolifeweekly.com. You can catch all of this and more on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern and again on Sunday at 10 a.m. But for now, back to you at home.
Catherine, thank you so much for keeping the pro-life message and reality front and centered. So I want to share further with you, we live in a culture and a society today, there's so-called marriage, and then there's true marriage as an institution, and we get this sense from people that, if it's two women together or two men together, or if it is two women together, you don't even need a man, okay? But my point is, we know what marriage is and what marriage does, but can you speak to what is it about fatherhood that is unique and brings into the family and to children?
Sure.
Because some people say, you don't need a father.
Right. Yeah, I think theologically, all fatherhood is a participation in God's fatherhood. And so that begins with love, and that's not distinct from a mother's role. I talked in the book about the idea of the father as a provider. I think that's important, but it's important that we extend it beyond the way that we normally think about that. Yes, it's about money. Yes, it's about gainful employment and so on. But it's also about being a spiritual provider. It's about taking the lead in the home when it comes to prayer, when it comes to the spiritual life. It's about being a provider in terms of feelings and emotions. Even it means being open to learning from. Open to learning from your children and learning about your children, and so and so I think that to the data is that when just a mother practices the faith in the home, the family is so and so, the children are so and so percent likely to stay with the faith. Right. But when the father practices the faith openly as well, the number skyrockets. Right. Say 80, 85% or something like that. And so I think that that just demonstrates how fatherhood, it involves a certain aspect of leadership, but it's spiritual leadership. It involves bringing the reality of God and the reality of His love, His goodness, His mercy into the home.
Yeah, I think one of the things you've done so well as a father, we have 2 boys and 2 girls, is you really help them with their own sexuality. And this is what boys do. You give them their identity. This is what girls do, and this is how we take care of girls. This is how we take care of boys. This is they grew up well in that, in knowing who they were in their own skin, and just like, we all deserve to be loved, honored, adored, and cherished. Yeah. Girls are this way, guys are this way, but really in integrating them emotionally with security and providing. Yes, Jim was a provider. I was a stay-at-home mom for all those years. Sure. Yeah. And fathers bring so much. Yeah. But our culture is like, we don't need a man, void of him. The way he's portrayed on television is like he's the biggest joke in the world.
Right. Yeah. I think along with the provider thing, there's also the idea of strength. But again, I want to kind of extend that beyond just physical strength to spiritual strength and to emotional strength, to being someone who can bring solidity and consistency to the home. And it's not to say, again, it's not to say that the mother doesn't have that role.
Right.
You know, all these roles are shared in some way, but there is something, again, when we think of that analogy between God's fatherhood and our fatherhood, God's fatherhood is solid, it's stable, it's consistent, it is, but it's also welcoming and merciful and compassionate. It's all of these things. You know, one of my favorite movies is The Tree of Life. Came out several years ago, and it's kind of a impressionistic movie, but one of the most beautiful things about it is the way it portrays the moral maturation of a young child, specifically of young boys.
Brandon, we're gonna have to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But we have Friday.
Yeah, perfect.
So we're
Well,
gonna continue.
I'll finish my Tree of Life story
It seems like we're
on
finishing
Friday.
up right where we began. Being a husband, being a parent, undoes continual adolescence. It's BrandonMcGinley.com. God bless you and all of your loved ones. Keep it on EWTN. Bye now.